Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's University Business Web Seminar, which is entitled UB Survey Results, the Impact of COVID-19 on Campus Access and Student ID Technologies, which is brought to you by the generous support of our sponsor here today, Salto Systems. Now, before we get started, I'd just like to go just a few housekeeping items with you all today. If at any time you need any technical support, please use the the chat panel, which you can find on the right side of your screen, then select on my name, which is Stephen Blackburn, and then just type in your message and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. If you don't have computer speakers or maybe you prefer to listen privately, I will be submitting a phone number and access code in the chat that you can dial into. So look out for that if you need it for whatever reason. We will also be welcoming any questions you have today with a Q&A session that will be taking place at the very end of the presentation. You can submit a question to our Q&A by using the Q&A panel, which is again at the bottom right side of your screen, and then just send your questions to all panelists, which should be the default option. If you currently don't see the chat or the Q&A panels, again, look to the right side of your screen, bottom right-hand side, and click on the expand triangle, which should be located in front of the panel, and that will show you if you have access to it. Also, the last thing I'd like to point out before we get started, that if you would like to access the web seminar at a later time, you will be pleased to know that everyone who is registered and who is attending today will receive an email with a link to the slides as well as an archive recording. And now it is my pleasure to introduce to you our speakers today. We have UB's own Kurt, who is the research editor here at University Business. And we also have Ron Schaefer with us, who is the higher education lead over at Salto Systems. Great to have you both with us. Off to you, Kurt.
All right. Great. Thanks so much, Stephen. And thanks to Ron and to our audience, of course, for being here. Like Stephen said, my name's Kurt. I'm the research editor for University Business. I have a variety of roles here at UB, but among them, I conduct our audience surveys in partnership with our sponsors and partners. And so we're going to be looking at a survey that we did just a few months ago and looking at some of the results and talking about the implications for higher ed institutions. And Ron Schaefer is with us from Salto, an expert on access control. Ron, you just want to say hello to our audience here, and then we'll kind of dive in.
Absolutely. So I'm Ron Schaefer with Salto Systems. I am the education industry lead for our vertical. That's higher ed and K through 12. So I represent solutions, I like to say, for the access control industry. And I won't make this about all about Salto or PowerPoint you to death. So I'll let you get started.
All right. Great. Thanks again for being with us. Okay, so we might as well just dive in here. So first off, just some background about our survey. Like I said, University Business, we partnered with Salto to develop and deploy a survey of higher ed leaders in the fall of 2021, just a few months ago, to better understand, in part, how the pandemic was transforming campus access control and student ID systems, but also just trends in the segment overall, what people are thinking and feeling at institutions, and where things seem to be headed. A little about our respondents here. Demographics, we asked people, we deployed the survey to our whole audience, invited anyone who'd like to participate, which are made up of higher ed leaders, colleges and universities all over the country. And this is a quick snapshot of who responded. A wide variety of job titles, technology leadership, dean and faculty, presidents, vice presidents, student affairs, but also more than 17 other titles selected. Of course, job titles and responsibilities vary quite a lot across higher ed. And then we asked them to identify their enrollment size, leading answer under 5,000 students, but then some mid-sized as well, and then some over 15,000 students, some of the bigger ones, which makes sense, just that there are more of those institutions. And you see that over at the right there, in terms of the type of institution, well, the most four-year private, but also a good amount four-year public, and then some community colleges in there as well. So again, that makes sense. There's just more of those four-year private colleges that are smaller. So it makes sense that we get a lot of those respondents. We had just over 200 participate. And so we were pleased to see diversity here. That's one of the themes here. Diversity in size, type of institution, geographic area all over the country. So with that, we'll just dive into what we asked about. So first off, here is a kind of a setting the scene, broad-based question, just getting a sense of what tools their institution currently uses when it comes to facilities access control, and provided a multiple choice here. And you can see, here's what they said. The leading answer by a significant margin, more than 80%, saying physical keys. More than half say they're using ID cards, and then RFID enabled ID cards, slightly less key fobs, even less PIN numbers, and then mobile credentials, less than 10%. Ron, you work with a lot of institutions and look at their access control systems. Maybe you could take us through these tools and systems and talk about why this is and kind of the lay of the land here.
Absolutely. So I get the opportunity working with Salto Systems to talk to higher education locations weekly. And physical keys, I ask this question every single week. Why physical keys? And the majority is it's mechanical, it's trusted, it's been around since the beginning. It's what we know. We're comfortable, we're solid. And then you have to start to diffuse that to say, okay, let's tell a story here. What about the safety and security portion of it? That tends to go out of the window. And then we kind of roll into, well, we have ID cards. Well, yeah, they're max stripe. Well, what are some of the issues that you have with those? Again, they've been around. We know they work. We know the limitations. We know the issues. And once you start to peel back the layers of the onion, you're trying to get to where the smell is at. And when you talk about RFID enabled cards, radio frequency identification, sort of the new kid on the block. Everyone hears Prox cards and smart cards and so forth. But, hey, what's on the card? How do we get to it? Is it secure? I always like to roll back and say, well, we just talked about physical keys. I mean, how secure is that? But again, that's the overall answer. It's trusted. We know it. We can physically copy it. We can see it. Then key fobs, just another form of an RFID card, which goes on your key ring, and it's convenient. Key fob with anything is convenient. PIN numbers. This one is always a shared risk because you have a PIN, and a lot of universities like it because it's easy, it's convenient. However, I just shared it with 80 people. You don't even know who's gone in the door. And mobile credentials. I can't talk enough about that. That is where it's going. Mobile, mobile, mobile. Why? Your banking's on there. How you communicate with the world is on there. Your social aspect of your life is on there. And most mobile devices are secured by biometrics. It's the safest. I was on the phone with the school today, and the biggest thing that says we don't want to control the students' phones. Well, you won't. You're just another app. And I've got more to get into that later on, but those are some of the responses I get between physical keys and working all the way down to mobile credentials.
Okay, sure, interesting. Great. All right, well, I'll keep it moving here. And so that was kind of a lay of the land question. And then we had several questions here asking about challenges, basically. So here's one. Is it a challenge for your institution from staffing, budget, or user experience perspective to issue, manage, maintain, and reissue keys, ID cards, PIN numbers, or other access control credentials? So whatever you're using, is this a challenge? And we provided a small range here, not just yes or no. And here's what they said. So just over 20%, I think it was 21%, saying significantly challenging, somewhat challenging. Obviously, the leading answer, more than half saying that. And then there's the lucky few there, 27, 28% saying it's not really a challenge. But you add that up, we've got more than 70% here saying it is some level of challenge for their institution to do this. Issue, manage, maintain, and reissue whatever they're using. So, Ron, what are your thoughts on that? Maybe what are some of those challenges? I'm sure you hear about a lot with the institutions you talk to.
I do. I do. And some of the feedback that I've gotten, again, from recent conversations is it's all about the experience. I mean, when you have an experience of, I lost my card, I now have to go to a particular place to retrieve a new credential, or budget or staffing. When someone loses their card, we need to see someone at a particular location, or my PIN number, it's been compromised, or I lost it. The challenge is, how do we know when to change that or when it's compromised? And that's why you hear the somewhat challenging, because it's always up in the air based on the student experience. Again, the biggest one that I normally hear about today is the budget. Hey, if you lose a card X amount of times, when do we charge and how much do we charge? And again, that's where mobile comes in. You're going to hear me say this a lot. With mobile, what's your phone number? You put it into the system. I send you a mobile credential. You're in. It's good for that instance. You lose it, I revoke it. I can give it to someone else. Again, the biggest challenge is, when do we react? When do we respond? How much staff do we need? And the budget.
Okay, sure. Yeah, and when you think about the size of institutions, the number of users, and that just snowballs there when you have some of those challenges.
Huge.
Sure. So similar kind of follow-up question, but probing a little more specifically on, just as Ron was saying there, this replacing or reissuing lost or stolen keys, ID cards. Does that require a significant amount of time, money, resources for your institution? And again, we didn't want to just say yes or no, but get an understanding of the severity here. So significantly, almost 10%, saying that somewhat, the leading answer over 50%, very little, and then not at all, just a handful saying that. But again, it's 65% or so saying it requires some level of time, money, resources for their institution. This process of replacing whatever it is, whatever tool you're using, people losing it, getting stolen, whatever it is, and they have to reissue it. So that's clearly significantly more than half of institutions saying, yeah, this requires a lot. And I think that's pretty big when you consider, everyone knows the financial pressures that higher ed is under, and the resource pressures. To have this just another challenge and kind of a resource intensive task that institutions have to deal with is not something that they probably need. Ron, your thoughts on this one?
Well, the reason it's a significant amount of time, because it's a reactive measure. Let me tell a quick story really quick. Is I always ask these questions in any of my meetings, is that, what is the first thing that needs to happen when a card is lost or stolen? Most people would say, I need to make a phone call, I need to contact this guy, I need to do this, that, and the other. Well, that's all a reactive approach. The first thing that happens is, you need to realize that your key or your card has been lost, that it's been compromised. And then at that point, you go into a reactive state. Now, we need to determine how much damage has been done. That's where the significant amount of time comes in, from the somewhat blue category from the survey. Was it a great grandmaster? Do we need to rekey all the locks? Was it a particular hall? Was it a sensitive data area? that's where the significant amount of time is to replace. See, it's not just replacing the stolen key or the ID credential, it's everything reactive to that. So most of the systems, again, like Salto Pro Access Space, you can be more proactive by having like a revalidation on the card, so that way if something happens, the card is deactivated. But we'll get into that. But that's where the blue somewhat comes into play. It's the time that it takes and the reactive measures based on what has happened or what has occurred from the time that you've been alerted that the credential is lost or stolen to the time that you can go and cancel that credential out.
Mhm. Sure, yeah, it makes sense when you put it in those terms. I mean, anything that is reactive um, is going to be very costly, whether it's,
Absolutely.
they talk about that a lot in cybersecurity or finance or enrollment changes. When you're reacting instead of being proactive, that's going to be costly in a lot of ways. All right, great. So I'll keep it moving. Like I said at the outset, obviously the pandemic looms large over everything we're talking about here and elsewhere. This touched basically everything across higher ed and K-12 for that matter. But we wanted to ask particularly if the pandemic increased the level of interest in instituting a touchless or contactless ID and building access system on your campus, as opposed to metal keys, ID cards, or other systems that require physical interaction. So probing into that, one aspect of the pandemic is trying to find ways for more social distancing, reduce the touch points and the contacts across a campus when you have so many people in such a tight area, basically. So here's what they said. Good amount, more than 30%, about a third saying definitely. Again, we didn't just want to say yes, no. And then somewhat 37, 38% or so. And then no interest right now was just the remaining 30%. So you add that up, you've got about 70% of folks at institutions saying it had increased their level of interest in something like this, at least somewhat. So, Ron, you started to hint at, you mentioned mobile credentials a few times there and some of the advantages there, but you think during this pandemic period, we've seen this reflect what you've heard about increasing interest in touchless systems?
Absolutely. The majority of a lot of the higher ed, I would say during this time, I received the most calls, not just for how can we implement mobile, but how can we make it our own. With Salto, there's a way to use our just in mobile with the level of interest of designing your own. And we'll talk about that later, so that it fits into your current platform or your current application, so that it's something familiar you're giving your campus, your students, your faculty, something they know already in an existing app they can use. I mean, there's a just-in mobile SDK that they can develop to and write to, but I received more calls during this time about how do we implement it? What features and tools do you have? Can we get started right away before our team starts to rebrand it our own? Absolutely. And again, it was everything remote. And then because of the pandemic and the touches, hey, how can we synchronize the data into Salto so that we don't need everyone to come in? We don't need to take pictures. We don't need to get the phone numbers. We already have a database. So this is actually, it was a learning time for me as well, because Salto was flooded with so many phone calls. Just the hand holding or the consulting of help us as a partner do this. And I think the pandemic actually opened our eyes to a lot of things that we said couldn't be done that actually could be done. So again, that's where you get the blue with the yes, somewhat, because a lot of schools are still trying to figure it out. A lot of them are saying, because of the pandemic, do I really want to dive into monitoring or maintaining the end user's phone? Which you don't. It's another app. And I think we're finding out more and more as we go forward and campuses are starting to like get back to normal.
Hmm. Sure. Yeah. The contactless side or piece of this is one of many
It's huge.
features and things that make it convenient and all the other things. But the pandemic, of course, gave everybody a sense of urgency for a whole lot of things and kind of forced you to, as you said, do things
Force you
that
to
you
think
thought,
out of the box.
yeah, yeah, be creative and find ways to solve the problem. Um, all right, great, interesting. I'll keep it moving here. And oh, just mention again to our audience, everybody in our audience, if you do have any questions here, either about the survey or for Ron, just be sure to enter it in the Q&A, bottom right-hand corner there. Open that up and enter your question there, and then we'll get to those at the end. So I think we alluded to some of this earlier. We wanted to ask directly when a campus user needs to have their keys, ID, or credentials. Again, whatever you're using, issued or reissued, are they required to do so in person at a card office or key control office? And I think, implied in there or understood in there is also at certain hours. No one's key control office is probably open 24/7. So here's what they said. Overwhelming majority, almost 85%, saying yes, their users are required to do so in person, and we can assume at certain hours to do this. And then here's a quick follow-up. We asked, whoever said yes was presented with the follow-up question. So these 85% then asked, does that card office or key control office deal with crowds at certain times of the year or semester? And here's what they said. While the majority said no, they probably have a pretty efficient operation there. I think it's a pretty significant number for 37% to say yes. Our office has to deal with long lines and crowds. When you think about, that's basically 85% of institutions. That's a lot across the country, and then 37% of those. This is a lot of institutions have to deal with this. So two-parter there. Ron, what do you think about this? I think you mentioned, the inconvenience to a lot of students having to first identify that they've lost something and then have to go in person to an office at certain times to take care of it, right?
Exactly. So with the long lines and the physical credentials, you need to go somewhere to meet someone to do something to attain a new credential. So I've heard that it destroys the user experience at that point. Because like you said, the card office is not open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you lose it at midnight, you're coming back from wherever, you need to alert someone needs to come in, someone needs to, boot up a system and then enroll another card. Again, when we talk about where all of this is going to avoid those long lines and losing a card and the touch points, everyone's comfortable with their mobile device. Our mobile device goes places it probably shouldn't even go. All right. So it's the most secure. We will grab our phone before we grab our keys. We will leave the party and leave our friend before we leave our phone. Not that I've ever done that, but if you back to the question, long lines, crowds, obtaining a new key, all goes away with mobile, but it is a huge inconvenience and it destroys the experience. So I definitely hear this one on a weekly basis. How can we, for our students, increase the user experience when a card or a credential gets compromised in any way, shape, or form? So that's a huge issue.
Sure. Yeah, it gets to a lot of issues, a lot of problems, and ultimately, I think as you've alluded to, has an impact on the student experience overall. How they think about their institution. Nobody wants to go to an office and stand in a long line or crowd. Like going to the DMV or something. And you want students to think that their institution, their experience meets their expectations for convenience, and we'll get more into that in a
And
second.
also, is it forward thinking? I mean, everyone
Yeah,
wants to be at an institution where it's proactive. It's forward thinking. That they want the latest technology. They want to be able to brag about it. They want to be able to hold up their device and say, "Hey, I can get in with a watch or a mobile device." So that kind of takes this inconvenience out and changes the experience level.
sure. Great. So a few questions here, more related questions, but as we've been saying, you know, uh, we've referred to meeting the expectations of students. So we asked about that. Again, whatever system you're using, whatever tools you're using, keys, ID, credential system or systems, do you think it's meeting the expectations of your students for convenience, security, capabilities, and ease of use? And again, we didn't want to just say yes or no, but try to get a range of what people thought. So here's what they said. First off, yes, confident, yes, but that's only about 35% saying that right out of the gate. And then you look at pretty significant, 27, 28% saying they weren't sure, and then 30% saying probably not, and then another 7, 8% saying definitely not. So again, you add those up, it's only about 35% saying, yeah, we're meeting our students' expectations. About 65% saying, not sure about that, probably not, or definitely not. So that's a lot. And Ron, you get this? How much when you talk to institutions, is it hearing from students about their expectations, trying to meet their expectations, that the feedback that they're getting from their students?
Well, it's all about the credential, as the survey says. Think of the credential as a shared space. It's a one for all. Can I use this for my meal plan? Can I use this at the library? Can I use it to get into my room? Can I use it on public transportation? Again, it's the overall story of what is my campus experience. And a lot of them will say, I'm not sure because I'm not sure where I can go with this. I'm not sure if I can share the credential with third party systems. That's kind of where the consulting comes into play. But yes, again, on a weekly basis, my job is to be the listening arm for Salto Systems to understand, what do the people want? I just really wanted to say that, but what do the students want? What are they looking for? How can my institution make my on-campus experience better? Give me a one for all. Make it do everything. Let it integrate with everything. I don't want more of, I want less of, but a better experience of. So yeah, this is one of the, I like this question because it's one of the big things that I get after we're done talking access points and mechanical key replacement is, now, how can we take all of these moving targets and land it on the credential to create convenience along with security for our students? So I think the not sure, from my experience, that's where that comes from. And a lot of the yeses are, we are that proactive campus. We are moving forward. We understand the challenges, but we want to be forward thinking in a positive way as well.
Mm-hmm. And again, that seems to be in the minority of institutions when it comes to this specifically, anyway. Okay, great. Another feature or specific data point we were interested in the event of an emergency, we've alluded to security and safety and some of those other capabilities. Does your institution have a centralized control capability that allows you to instantly lock down access to campus buildings and facilities? And another one, understanding that, hey, this isn't a yes or no question. So we provided a range here. And here's what they said. So you have yes for all facilities, just over 20%. Saying that they have some sort of system they can instantly lock down in an emergency. Another 20-something% saying for most, but even more saying for some, and then even more, the leading answer just saying flat out, no, we don't have anything like that. So Ron, most of the time we've spent here, we've talked about the convenience, the capabilities, meeting expectations of students and things like that. What about the security, the safety aspect of, say, mobile credentials and things? Could you touch on that?
Absolutely. So when we talk about lockdown, and the reason why the answer is so high for no is because this is where the convenience and the trusted and been around since forever mechanical key fails. Because it's a mechanical key, you can't react. You can't be proactive. You can't act in a fashion that says I need to have all entry doors locked with notification with situation awareness. So it's all the little things that make up the campus lockdown. Yes, we want to lock it down, but has there been notifications to other parties or first responders? Again, I'm gonna go ahead really quick on my soapbox and for the story of with Salto, we have a feature that allows triggers to be created so that if I were to show a red card, we can lock down the entrance doors and send a message to security that says this has occurred and activate relay number 1, 2, 3, and 4 so that a strobe is flashing or a siren is alerted and different things like that. So back to the survey, I would say the mechanical key is the big failure here because it doesn't allow you to have a proactive approach. It doesn't have a notification approach. It's a, hey, this is happening. Let me find one of the 47 keys on my ring and go from there. So the instant lockdown of access to a campus building or facility, that's kind of the failure point right there.
Yeah, great. And would you say that's a limitation of, say, the ID card that as well? Those systems don't typically have that, do they?
More so, I love that you put it that way. More so of the access control device on the door from a mechanical standpoint, maybe even to a wired or wireless standpoint if it's not responding within a couple of seconds or milliseconds. Just because something's wired or wireless doesn't make it active lockdown. Quick 30 seconds is, some legacy systems that are wireless are set by time ranges to activate or wake up at certain times of the day to save battery life. But if I need to do an instant lockdown, what good is that wireless? If that lock is going to sleep to save power or to extend battery life, and it doesn't wake up until 3 hours from now to do a huge download, well, that does me no good. I mean, again, to talk about a salto access point, the heartbeat is every 4 to 8 seconds. So depending on where the count is at, that could be an instant lockdown. Or let's reverse that. That could be an instant unlock all doors for life safety to get into an area. We got to tell the story and put some use case and scenarios. And it's great to have features and functions, but they mean absolutely nothing if we don't put a use case scenario to them. So again, back to the question, you really have to ask yourself, what is the downfall of the failure of instantly locking down an access point or an access area for a campus? It all goes back to what you just said. It's not the credential, it's the locking device that's on that access point or at that door.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Yeah, it's pretty amazing, really, that when you describe it like that, the capability to be able to do that, and how how far we've come from X number of years ago, just using brass keys for everything. Like you said, you have no capability to do that across campus should you need to. Um, all right, great. And then we talked a lot about challenges and some capabilities. So we wanted to ask about capabilities of some of the more modern or futuristic credential systems. So gauging here, would your institution be interested in a system that allows students, faculty, or staff to securely and safely issue or reissue their own ID or access credentials using their mobile device or a self-service kiosk? You'll remember we asked earlier about how many their users, institutions require in person at card office, legal office, or something like about 85% saying that they did, and then a large percentage saying that they deal with long lines and crowds. So this could be a solution to that, at least partly. Users can do this themselves at conceivably any hour of day or night, right? So we asked if that would be useful, if they'd be interested in that. And again, with a range, definitely 17%, probably 31%. And then, so it's split about 50-50, about half saying they'd be interested in a system and that sort of capability. I would imagine those saying no might already have, a certain percentage of them already have that capability. Or they're the type of institution, maybe a community college or something that doesn't necessarily need that, depending on the type of institution or their setup. But Ron, we've talked offline about this kiosk idea, and I think you've alluded to the capabilities of mobile credentials, users doing this themselves day or night. Could you talk about that trend and the advantages of that?
It's a huge trend, and I'm getting more and more requests to talk about kiosks because, Salto, we are looking at the kiosk concept, and it is a huge rise. Let's look at it outside of the access control environment. A lot of your fast food restaurants now have gone from face-to-face server to a kiosk.
Sure.
I'll pick on McDonald's. I mean, the only thing that I like there is fries, but that's neither here nor there. The kiosk at McDonald's, you place your order, you swipe your card, you choose what you want, they prepare it, you pick it up. I mean, the whole self-service thing. Let's talk about grocery stores. Let's talk about the big one, Walmart. Kiosk, self-service. Let me get my items. I know how to pay for them. I'm out the door. So why not do that with your credentials? I mean, it's the same concept that I speak about every week. Your students are online, so should your access. There's a way to do it. And issuing your own could be as simple as going to a self-service kiosk. I lost my card, validate who you are. It's biometric. It's a PIN number. There's a motorized device. It spits out a card. Or better yet, the kiosk says, do you have your mobile phone? Yes. Enter the number. Verify who you are, and then sends you a mobile credential to your phone. I think it'd be kind of crazy to say that we would meet a student today that doesn't have a smartphone. All right. So back to the question, the rise of self-service isn't a kiosk, but it doesn't have to be a physical credential. It can be self-service as, hey, I lost my phone, I got a new one, the number's the same, send me a new credential. Or temporarily, I didn't get a new phone, I need a temporary card. Me and my roommate got into a disagreement. I need to be put into a different room. So the kiosk can do a number of things. Solve late night issues, lost card, reissuance to a mobile device, many things. So yes, we are hearing that and we are listening, and we've got some things in the works for that.
Yeah, cool. Very interesting. Yeah, it's interesting when you put it that way, the self-service trend, as opposed to face-to-face. We see it everywhere, and college students are growing up with that. Their retail experience, their restaurant, grocery store, etc. As you said, and it seems pretty archaic to a college student to have to go, again, to a card office and wait in a line and all of that stuff, when every other aspect of their lives is very different.
I mean, and kind of touch on the college student thing, I talked about going to the store the other day with my daughter, and she said, I already ordered those items from Amazon. They'll be here in 2 hours. So again, everything's done self-service on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Like she's like, why are you going into the store?
Right.
Well, because they have stuff. But
Yeah.
it's self-service.
Right. Great. Okay. Well, that's at a high level, everything we explored in the survey. So I think I thought it was really interesting. We thought it was very interesting. Any of you in our audience, if you took our survey, thanks so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it. we're going to take some questions. Again, if you have any questions, just enter in the Q&A bottom right there. Ron, before we do, maybe you could talk to us a little more about Salto. You know, we talked a lot about challenges and trends, some problems that institutions are dealing with, but as you said, I think at the beginning, you know, you specialize in solutions too, right? So
Absolutely.
could you talk to us about some of those solutions and, you know, those capabilities that we talked about?
Sure. So Salto is more of a tell me more. And I like to tell the story of tell me more, which is I like to lead in with this, which is Salto gives you the ability to place an access point anywhere at any time without the trouble cost of the infrastructure. The infrastructure can always be a barrier, whether that is wiring a door, wireless, mobile. Again, Salto's unique look at the industry is let's make the credential smarter so that we can put the end node or the access point anywhere. Anyone who knows me, I always give the cornfield story where Salto can put a lock in the middle of a cornfield, give access, deny access, update access rights without having to push that across the wire, because access control is limited today by how far can I go with the wire and the infrastructure, or how far can I go with the wireless. With Salto, we remove all those barriers because we make the card smarter. It's all about the credential. Typically, credentials are facility code and a card number, which is read only, and you have the endpoint or the access point make all the decisions and do all the work. But what if the credential was smart enough to do that, make dynamic changes with 3 AA batteries inside this access point, and at that point I get an audit as well and an event management? That's crazy. But again, Salto's claim to fame, and ask me how, my email is there. Claim to fame is putting an access point anywhere without the overhead of the infrastructure or the limitation, whether that is a server rack, a cabinet lock, an outside pool gate, a fitness center, an online access control that's controlling a panic bar, electric strike, a mag, or my favorite, the school shares a parking lot with the city, but we can't get our infrastructure out there to control the gate. With Salto, you put a controller and a reader out there at the gate and you're done. Why? Because where's the data? The data's on the card. And if you don't tie that to a use case, those terms mean absolutely nothing. You got to put it with a use case scenario. So again, Salto allows for that to be an easy lift. And when we talk about the mobile, Salto's an end-to-end solution. You download our Just-In mobile app in the iOS or Android store. And at that point, once you have it, it's a matter of just assigning the access from within our Pro Access Space platform, which is 4 million users, 65,000 doors, and no upgrade fees for the life of the product. So to start, I'll throw that one in there. No yearly fees either. But again, it's all in how you look at it. It means nothing if you don't tie it to a use case scenario. And that's what Salto allows. It allows for just about every use case. And we partner with a lot of the current access control system out there that are wired or wireless, because they do understand that Salto brings a unique perspective of placing that access point anywhere. And so our integration partners are great, and we have lots of those listed on our website. So I'll get off of my soapbox right now and see if we have any questions.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Ron, and of course, Kurt, as well, for your time with us today. So, like you're saying, we have come to the Q&A portion of our webinar, where you can now send us your questions, and so they can be answered live on the air. If you haven't already, just send your questions by accessing the Q&A panel, which you can find at the right there, located at the bottom of your screen. If you can't see it, there should be 3 dots, or I like to call it an ellipses, next to the chat button. Just click on that, and that should bring you to the Q&A panel. Okay, so let's see here. We have a few questions that have been coming in. So I won't name the current system this person is using, but they're saying they're currently using an ID system. Can the current card readers be used with Salto?
Absolutely. So I see that question, and for that particular partner, absolutely. There is an integration, a high-level integration tied to that system. that allows that system to take advantage of every Salto access point that we have, whether that is an online, a wireless, or a wire-free device. That particular system does allow full integration along with the mobile.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you for that. And you probably, since you're looking in the Q&A, you can probably see the next question that came in. But this person is asking if the app can be tied to their student management system.
Absolutely. So Salto's Just In Mobile can be a standalone solution because it's in, we're end-to-end company, but it can be tied. So, there is a mobile API that can be uh, designed by your school to fit right in with your current uh, application that you have that your students use. So let's say, for instance, you already have an application. It's got dining, it's got library, it's got parking, it's got passes, whatever that is. You could actually build the Salto or integrate the Salto Just In Mobile right into that application. So my email address is there. Definitely reach out to me for more information. But yes, absolutely.
Cool. Actually, I want to ask this next question, even though most of our participants here are from the U.S., but this is just interesting. So this person seems to be from Croatia. They're saying we have government issues with their student cards. Does the encryption by Salto make these useless or question mark, question mark?
I don't see that one.
Yes, let's see. It's at the very bottom there of the Q&A. It's from
No.
Marco?
Nope. I see three questions, but I do not.
That's not a problem. We can move to the next one if you'd like. We can,
I can answer. You can read it. Let's go for it.
yeah, sure. So the question is, in Croatia, they have government issued student cards. Does the encryption by Salto work with this?
Great question. And it depends on the type of card. So Salto is compatible with the majority of credentials out there, your HIDI classes, your NXP, MyFair Ultralights, your MyFair Classics, Desfire EV1, EV2. So there's two things we have to keep in mind when we talk about credentials. Number one is the technology compatibility. Is the card compatible with the 13.56 megahertz? That's number one. Number two, so remember, Salto encodes a card. We don't enroll. The next biggest question is there enough free space on the card? So how we get around that, or how we tackle that, is we always ask, the potential end users to provide us with a card. We analyze the card with our team, and we can let you know, number one, the technology is definitely compatible, and if there's enough space or room on the card for Salto to exist with the other existing applications. So as far as encryption, those encrypt we still use the standard encryption that comes with the card. So if we're talking about a NXP or a MyFair Ultralight C or MyFair Desfire EV1, EV2 card, that security is there. I always like to say Salto increases the security because we're not looking at the card number and the facility code. We're actually going to take the card and format the card and encrypt the card and then put our information on the card. So it's a lock within a lock within a lock. But definitely reach out to us and we can verify if your card is compatible.
Awesome, perfect. And I'll provide that information to you afterwards, Ron, so you can connect. Let's see. So this next question, this is pretty. It's what's going on right now in the world, as you'll see in a second. But what is foreseen, especially for international students, when the credit card or banking system is frozen, and is something that we're seeing right now in the Ukraine?
So I won't say the good thing, but one of the advantages of using Salto is that it's its own application that exists on the card. So even if we're sharing a card with the banking industry, and I've seen that a lot of institutions, that will not interfere with your access control with Salto. Again, think of the card as a USB memory stick, or let me break it down further. an apartment complex, and Salto exists in, one of the rooms, or one of the apartments there, and you've got all these other applications that exist there as well. What happens in those other sectors of those apartments doesn't affect us. So kind of go back to a high level. What happens on the banking side of the card does not affect Salto, because it's in different sectors, it's in different areas of memory, it's encrypted, it's protected, there's a mutual authentication key where we read and write and go from there. So there should be no effect regardless of the banking side.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And I also have some questions that came in to me privately. So this person, they're asking, kind of taking a step back here, like, where should an institution start when looking at updating their access control systems?
Oh, that is a great question. The first place you look is not at the doors and not at the lock. You look at what credential you want to use. That's going to give you the direction. All right. So do you want do you want your access control system to be something you have with something you know? Do you want it to be mobile credential? Are you still in the physical? Does it need to have a hard key override? Let's look at how you want to access the area. That's number one. Then that'll lead into the areas. And then the areas will lead into different type of access points to control that area. I always like to say Salto has, again, a solution for every door. If it's wire free, which means the information lives in the lock and on the credential, and then that information comes back to us once that card or that credential touches an online point. Obviously, if it's mobile, it's real time, regardless of wireless or wired. If it's wireless, then okay, let's think about how we want that information to come back. And if it's wired, those are going to be your electric strikes, panic bars, turnstiles, different things like that. The battery powered locks are going to give you, depending on the model, so I'm going to be really broad here, anywhere from 40 to 60,000 cycles based on the use. But if you have a door that is, high traffic, then it'll be our wall reader and our control unit with our relay logic that's controlling, that device.
Perfect. Thanks. And we had another question that just came in a few seconds ago from Kai. So it was mentioned, or you mentioned at one point, that batteries are used to power individual access points. So and here's the question: is there a fail-safe for if the batteries are, dead, and or is there a system to alert security maintenance that this needs to be maintained?
Absolutely. And I love that question. Someone's thinking proactive today. Someone ate their Wheaties. So, yes, we have an alerts and event management system that will automatically send emails to groups or email groups when the batteries are below a certain point. So that report can be automatically generated in the system daily, on a weekly basis. So again, proactive notifications is what we're about. We're never gonna, have you go to a door and the batteries are dead unless you're not viewing the notifications. Now, let's say you're not viewing them because you're busy. How do we gain access to that door? Well, we have what's called a handheld device, a portable programming device, and that allows you to connect and actually provide power to the door to gain access. Even if you remove the batteries to that lock, let's say someone removed the batteries and shut the door. This device will allow you to jumpstart or connect power and use your card to gain access. So we've thought of things like that. And obviously, if we have those areas where traditional access control has to be put back in, I'm talking about physical keys, our units have the ability to accept a physical core and use that physical key if necessary.
Cool. And it looks like more people are starting to think
Love it.
proactively, which is good.
I love it. Bring it. It's what it's about.
So this, so this new question in from Rob. So this in regards to your cam locks, and this is what they're envisioning. If someone loses their card, can you centrally update the lock so the card will no longer work?
Absolutely. We have a couple of different ways to do that. We can cancel the
Awesome.
card in the system. That's number one. And then virtually, that information goes out on our deny list, which means that all the locks that are wired and wireless get the message immediately. Card is canceled. For the locks that are disconnected, this is the great part about Salto. the cancellation message is pushed to every mobile device. And it's also updated when those cards touch online points or wireless points, so that when someone does touch that offline point, it tells that point, Ron Schaefer's card is no longer valid. Next time you see it, delete it. Just like the wired or wireless. But one other thing that we have is a revalidation that says, hey, my card is good for, I love this question when someone says, when I ask, do you have a card to an institution? Yes. How long is it good for? Oh, I'm the big cheese. It's good for 55 years. I always tell them they're the weakest link to any system when you do that. We have not only an expiration and activation, but we have a revalidation that says, since you are the big cheese and you do have access to 85,000 doors, your card's good for those 55 years. However, only in 1 day increments, 1 hour increments, 5 day increments, whatever that is, which means that for the offline doors, every 2 or 3 days, your card needs to touch a wired or wireless point so that it updates the card. And if you don't, then when you go and you try and touch an offline door, it says, whoa, 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 I don't know if you're still good. I need you to go touch a wired or wireless door before you come back and you access me, because, hey, I need to make sure you're still good. That's called a proactive approach. Most systems don't have that. They have a start and a stop. That's a reactive approach. So again, there's many different ways, and we put those wireless or wired points on the check or choke points around the building or in the building so that they're convenient in the flow of traffic and they increase the user experience. So by me opening the main door, opening a classroom door, or going to one of those wired or wireless points, I'm getting that information. So when I go to that offline or disconnected point, I've already got the information for the day. So again, based on the area, that's how we determine what access point needs to go there. Hey, this is our server room. It's huge. We have to know what happens down to the second. That's going to be a wireless door. Hey, this is our main entrance door. We need to lock that down, and it's got an electric stripe. Well, that's going to be a wall reader and a control unit. Well, these are classrooms internally. We just need to have access on there, and we're okay that they can use the mobile and the information floats virally or virtually on the card. Okay, well, that's wire free. But I see we have more questions, so we'll move on.
Yeah, a bunch of them just came through, and we
Love
do
it.
have time for about one more, but I'll say this right now. If you're submitting your questions now and we don't get to them, I'm sure that Ron or someone else from Salto will be able to answer them after the event. So continue sending in your questions, and we'll get those answered to you after the event. So this is really great. But so this last question I'm going to end with is this person, they're hearing that RFID enabled readers, they have significant delivery delays, or they're under the impression it's more than 6 months. Is this something that you've been seeing, in the industry? And if so, when should their institutions see these delivery delays resolved?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, that's across all the industries, along with the chip issue that's going on. I would say the good part about Salto, we were able to pivot early on and see those delays. And we started actually reaching out to our manufacturers for a new chip design to implement into our newest blocks, like the XS4 Plus Original. And we were able to get it down from, I'm hearing some companies are anywhere between, 12 to 18 months. Well, Salto, depending on which access point it is, can be anywhere from right now, anywhere from about 4 to 8 weeks, no longer than 10. But again, it's because we saw this coming and we were able to pivot with a new design, again, the XS4 Original Plus and a new chipset. So depending on which lock or which device you order, could be 4 weeks, but no longer than 10. So that's affecting everyone.
All right, perfect.
So if you
Thank
got
you.
orders, you want to get them in now. If you're thinking about Salto, you want to call us now. I had to throw that one in. Come on.
There we go.
Come on.
So like I was saying, that's all we have for our live Q&A. But like I was saying earlier, for all the questions that have been coming in just now that we didn't get to, we at UB will be sharing those with Salto and Ron so that you guys can get those questions answered after today's webinar. And also too, as I go through my closing slides in a few seconds, please feel free to continue submitting your questions if any come to mind. But yeah, first off, before I do that, thank you, Ron, and thank you, of course, Kurt and Salto Systems. This was a really great presentation, and we can tell by all the questions that are coming in that everyone was really really invested. So that's really great to see. And to you, our audience here, I would also like to thank you for joining us today. For those of you who particularly enjoyed it, you'll be pleased to know there are many more upcoming web seminars like this one that are provided by UB or University Business, which is the leader in editorial coverage of news, current issues, and trends in higher education. We have a wide range of readers here. They subscribe for free, and they stay up to date with us online through our newsletters and web seminars like this one. Also, if you would like to watch this web seminar again at a later date, or some of you who believe that the solutions that we provided and from Ron would be particularly helpful to your colleagues, we will, at UB, we will be sending you an email later tomorrow, and that will include an on-demand recording of this web seminar as well as the link to the slides, so look out for that. So with that, on behalf of UB, this is Stephen Blackburn. Thanks, everyone. Take care, be well, and stay safe, everyone. Thank you very much.